Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this broadcast with me, Martin Crossy, Crossy's Corner. Today we have the one and only Andrew Triggs Hodge, Hodgie, to those that know him. Hi there, Hodgie.
How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good today. Now, said on the introduction, Hodgie, that you were one of Britain's best ever rowers, and I think going by...
You said that, not me.
Yeah, okay. You've got 3 Olympic gold medals. You won 2 of them in the stroke seat. Does it, when you look back on your career now, does that sort of reflection come up? I was one of the best ever. What do you think of when you look back at your career?
I look back at I had such a varied, so many opportunities in the sport. And I always like to think back amongst the good times, obviously, but there's a long list of stuff from some of the sessions in a Viz in the 8 leading up to 2016. There was some of the conflicts and some of the arguments that I was part of, and the fire and passion of the people I rode with and myself. But then there was like the Hansa Cups, and like me and Pete jumping in to a really young boat with Henry Philman coxing and some great guys, and going toe to toe with the Germans, who were like it was their reign through till I think it was London 2012, and we held them for 8 kilometers and they couldn't break us, right? Until finally they sort of going from. But we it's just incredible experience, just an amazing boat that we jumped into for a few days, and then all the way, even like Boston trials. Boston gets a fairly bad rep with rowers, but I loved it. I loved the bend, the bend.
One bend.
Where I'd sort of put my steering foot to use, and then all the way right back. I mean, it's the medals with the output. They were never the sort of. It was never the sort of be all and end all for rowing for me. The best bits were always everything that was before that. Right back to staffs, under the guise of Ed Green, and just some incredible memories all the way through.
One of the things, I don't know whether you ever think that, but I'm not sure whether you ever got the recognition you deserved in terms of, for what you achieved. 3 Olympic gold medals is a stunning achievement by any standards. Do you think that was recognised properly in the rowing world or the wider sporting world?
In the rowing world, yeah, I think I've certainly had my fair share. I think when you talk about recognition is a marketplace. It's how many people see what you do, and I think if you look at how British sport has, certainly Olympic sport, has just exploded in the last sort of 20 years. We're part of a huge field of Olympic gold medalists, and you've got to be realistic. If you're not, we're a minority sport, we're an amateur sport. We row with a lot of passion. We speak to other rowers very well, but we're still, as a sport, working out ways to get outside that bubble.
Yeah.
And so any sort of recognition exists within that, unless you're a Redgrave, going for your 5th when no one else has got one, or you stand head and shoulders for other reasons. It's, I'm very happy with what's happened in the sport for me and coming away from it. And the recognition part, I still have some great moments every now and again in the street, or you sort of get an email from someone and they relive their experiences of sort of watching or being part of the process in London 2012. There's still it's been, I don't feel like unjust in any way, no.
Yeah. A couple of things to talk about in terms of rowing. There was news from the International Olympic Committee that all of a sudden lightweight rowing, which was due to be ended in the Tokyo Olympics, has now got an extra sort of life, a reprieve for the Paris Olympics. No coastal rowing in the Paris Olympics. What were your views on that?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, they've sort of, the whole rowing program is sort of being looked at from various angles, and it's, the Olympics is a very special event. It doesn't sort of hold much. There's no model that can help you predict how the Olympics will move, or where it should go, or what it should do. And in that respect, I've kind of given up trying to guess or sort of have an opinion on what the Olympics should do, because it's a force unto itself. I think we just have to get on with it and adapt. And in some way, that's part of the beauty of the sport as well. It's sort of out of our control. So we just got to get on with it. I think, for the lightweights, who are looking at their careers cut short, I think it's great that they have that reprieve, and it'll certainly stem the flow of lightweights coming into the sports. So there'll be less of that collateral damage of someone gearing up for something and then having it taken away from them. And then the coastals, I mean, it's a very young sport in itself.
Yeah.
You look at the other sports that have been welcomed in, like breakdancing, whether you like it or not, it's, you look at the really great stuff, the sort of stuff that's on the, the Red Bull challenges and those private events, the stuff they do is some of the most physical, technical things you can demand from the human body. It's absolutely amazing. So I think as a sport, it probably has its place in the Olympics if they choose to have it. But breakdancing has its heritage. It goes back, was it 50 years now? I don't know, a long, long time. So for coastal rowing to come in so soon was quite an interesting move for me, and I think it's only good to give that element of the sport more time to develop and mature, figure itself out, and then hopefully it'll hit the Olympic stage with more weight to it.
One of the things that came out, Hodgie, in the IOC announcement was rowing's quota was cut from 526 to 502 seats, which is going to have kind of real impact trying to put together a 7-day regatta. And Fil Ljubicic has asked this question, what about compulsory doubling up in the 4 and in the 8 to make more seats available? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. One of the downsides of the sport is that we lack the superstars, and one of the reasons we lack the superstars is because we have so many potentially gold medalists. I think narrowing the field, while it sort of excludes a number of seats and is sort of partly bad for the sport, and now if you look at tennis, your top 4 or 5 individuals, the male or female, generally carry the sport. They have the personalities to carry the NGBs or the private events. People go to see them. And rowing's kind of suffered a bit, I think, because our field is so broad. You go to Caversham, there's 70, 80 athletes training there. And it kind of dilutes the sort of
star quality.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's harder to get out. I mean, Redgrave had to win 5 gold medals, or certainly 4, before he kind of really climbed into notoriety. And I think the concept of doubling up, I think, is really good. I think sort of some of the ideas I was rolling around in my head many years ago was, the 8 should be made from people in the 4s and the pairs, quads and doubles, and actually you then have your sort of your version of the 4x4 relay. For the athletics, it's a huge crowd pleaser, it's a puller, it's a really competitive event in itself, and it has a whole other list of sort of things that could alter the result. Dropping the baton, going out lane, tripping someone up. All those things add to that relay event being quite a special event, even though it's only really made from people doing other events already. And I think, you then look at the sort of, then my experience in Rio would have been quite different if the 8 would have had to be made up from the 4 and the pair. And, how would that have impacted me? Well, probably not great. But I think for the sport, trying concepts like that feels more important than being hung up on, is it 2K or 1,500 meters? Is it, 4 lane or 3 lane? I mean, come on, really, who cares? It's not going to be a massive difference. But what we can have a bigger impact is actually how the sport's perceived, how we're breaking out of what I think is we've become like so narrow focused in the performance criteria.
Yeah.
We've actually lost a lot of the magic of sport, which brings in elements of the unknown, the sort of bits you can't predict. And if you look at like football and those sorts of sports, you have the opportunity to really kind of have a result you didn't expect. Whereas rowing, you've seen the first set of World Cups, you pretty much know what's going to happen. And it's just about, certainly as a participant in that sport, just rolling out what you know you can do. Whereas even tennis and things like that, it's it's about the sort of magic of the unknown and really sort of riding that and having it as an integral part of your sport. So yeah, if 8s were doubled up, then fantastic.
Mixed crews, Tideway Scullers asked.
Mixed crews, yeah. Hey, why not? There's no rules on this. It's what we sort of decide to do. I tried to run an event a few years ago called Regatta London, and I was massively keen to get mixed crews in that. We did our test event where we had 8 row from Hammersmith Bridge to Limehouse Cut in East London, like 12 miles. It was a fantastic event, but the 5 test boats, of which Scullers was one of them, they were all mixed crews, and it was just brilliant. It looked amazing. So yeah, no, absolutely, why not? I think we've just got to get more events on the ground testing it. Wallingford Regatta should have a mixed 8s event or mixed 4s event.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think of all the stuff, all these ideas, it's easy to apply it right to the top level, but actually the most important arena to try it is on the ground. It's grassroots. Peterborough has been running sprints events for donkey's years. We know sprint event very, very well. And, I think anyone could have predicted how power rates would have happened. But where's the mixed events? Where's, a whole range of other formats that we should be sort of celebrating and trying and being innovative at the ground level and just seeing which one really works and taking that upwards rather than having it always sort of come down on 2 hours from the top.
Talking about sport, Iain Weir actually texted me a question which he wanted to put to you, which is kind of rowing related, but it was around the news about rugby and head injuries with Steve Thompson.
Yeah, I read about that.
Rowing is, or what your views are on the whole rugby thing.
We, as a sport, we definitely have a duty of care to each other. It's something when I watched that Michael Jordan, was it Michael Jordan? Oh no, the Lance Armstrong things on Netflix. They both talked about athletes know the risks. You talk about a cyclist. I can't remember what it was the perspective of, surely as an athlete, as a doping athlete, your own health should be a major concern. Like, you're putting all these drugs into you. Why weren't you thinking about your health? And it's like, mate, we're cycling down hills at 60, 70 miles an hour with, 1 stone in the road, and it's death. Who cares about it? It's that sort of perspective of risk, which, I certainly know it from when I had my year off in 14, 15, or 15, 16, sorry. I got AF because of, your heart just grows as an athlate.
Atrial fibrillation.
Atrial fibrillation, yeah, and it's it's in hindsight, it's just a fact of doing the sort of mileage and the cardio stress we put on our bodies. I remember, with a few other things, I had some of the glandular fever thing, and going through to Rio, I was in the back of my mind is, so when's it going to break? When's my body finally going to actually say, nah, I'm not up for this? And I don't know, I know stories of heart attacks and people had serious stuff. But in the back of my mind was, it doesn't matter. For right now, that moment when you're training and the adrenaline's going through your body, I'd be happy to finish this and give it all.
Yeah.
And to stop and be cautious.
Yeah. And
when you translate that to rugby, I used to play a bit of rugby, and it was all about the big hits. You want to go in and you want to, psychologically, it's probably more about punishing yourself than the person you're about to hit. But you go in to feel real, to feel alive. And I think the sport has a duty of care to explain and to empower the athlete to say, look, this is the risk you're taking. And I think to some degree we've kind of assumed that athletes do that already, but I'm not sure some of the young athletes really understood. It took me, 15 years to work it out. And in sport, you kind of think, well, if you're going to be hitting your head a lot, then that's going to take a toll. There's a lot of stories in boxing.
Yeah.
All the stuff that's been around for decades. The impact it has. And I generally don't know what the answer is, other than if someone's informed and been told of the risks and they still want to do it, then we shouldn't stop them.
Yeah.
I think sport and passionate sport, where boxing especially, in every right mind, we shouldn't be sending guys into the ring and making loads of money from it, but they do, and they want to keep coming back. And actually, if they're happy to do that with all the information on the table from when they were young, almost every year as they get older, be like, you do know the risk you're taking. And it's the same for rowers. And I think when we get inducted into the sport, we should have that explained to us. Like, look, this is, when you go into a performance program, if you get into this, you're going to be asked to do things out of the ordinary. We're going to take an ordinary person and make you do really special things. It's going to hurt. It's going to take you away from your family and your friends, and you're going to make sacrifices that you've never even thought, that you'd never take. I left Yorkshire thinking I'd never leave Yorkshire, never do a sport, never do anything that was going to take over my life. And, I moved down to London to row, and it's, so all these things, as long as you do it with knowledge, then the bottom line is we've got to let humans be humans. And half the story of being human is just hurting yourself. For a lot of us, that's actually one of the things that makes us feel real. And but we've got to do it informed.
One of the things about taking risks, the British team woke up 3 months ago and found that their chief coach was out of a job. How big a risk do you think British rowing took with making that decision? And where does that leave British rowing now ahead of the Olympics?
So I'd say it was a bit of a surprise they made the call. Knowing Jurgen, I was surprised that I would have been surprised he had made the decision wholly himself. I knew he was kind of hedging towards retirement, but he's a man who loved what he was doing, and he never leaves a project half finished. So there's got to be something quite serious going on. And I think, there's the new selection criteria that's come out. There's a lot of changes which are happening. And, I could easily have my opinion on those. I think the bottom line is we've got to support our athletes as best we can. And that's with stability and support as much as we can. And I think they've got to have the confidence that the best people are making the right decisions. And I'd say that goes from Brendan through the CEO all the way up to the board. All the strategies that they're now putting in place, all the big heavy decisions, I'm sure they got up to board level. And I think the most critical thing is that those decisions are being made by really qualified, experienced people who know what they're talking about. And I'd, if I were with a critical eye, I'd ask the board, who is working for them to give them that expertise. Okay, if it's not Jurgen, then who is it? Who's really been advising them on what's been tried and tested and what's failed and what's worked across all the other systems in the world. If we look at that selection policy, it's kind of going to a panel rather than a chief coach. My understanding of the system is there is no
3 selectors, the squad coach, which I guess in the heavyweight men will be Christian Felkel, the performance director, which will be Brendan Purcell if he's back off his sick leave, and then a qualified person, which could be someone like you, Hodgie.
Yeah, if I ever get an invitation. I mean, in the old days when I was around, it was Jurgen, and I knew that David Tannell, was both of them hugely experienced in the sports, track records. I know David would challenge Jurgen hard on his decisions, especially if it wasn't an obvious one. And you could kind of trust that, especially if you're looking at the top boat. I'm not sure it works so well as you went come down the rankings in terms of the other crews, but certainly that system produced a consistent gold medal production line that the sport has enjoyed. I'm assuming that the decisions have been made for, and it kind of states that they've had that big consultation with the athletes. And I can understand that the new system might be slightly more tilted towards the rest of the squad and actually any injustices they've had further down the line, which is certainly an important consideration. However, I kind of argue that the credit to Jurgen's system is that he's got 1 gold medal every year, every Olympics. And when we look at the vulnerability of the sport, the success, that gold medal is the one thing that keeps rowing, hanging on, but seemingly by its fingernails. Certainly as the years go on. So my sort of question would be like, well, where's the bit that's going to make sure that keeps, because I think we've got a selection policy which is looking at the whole team, that's good, but what's the bit that's going to keep that sharp end of the system really sharp? And I so it kind of comes down to the board and their decisions and how they're supporting Brendan. And I, if it works, fantastic. If the changes don't work, then I'd be really interested to know sort of what wasn't done, what was overlooked, or maybe what was put in place that may have examples. Because, the Australians tried a panel selection system a few years ago. And my understanding is that actually, after a pretty torrid Rio, they've gone back to a chief coach model, who is the primary decision maker, and sort of moved away from the panel side. So time will tell, but for us and for me, it's to support the guys on the ground and make sure they're as motivated, passionate, and feeling like they can stand on our shoulders. We're certainly not, the guys in the system. You've seen what they're doing on the rowing machines, and the quality of the athletes is absolutely incredible.
Do you reckon that quality is there to deliver a gold medal even after disappointing results in the Linz World Championships in 2019? What do you think the chances are of Great Britain actually winning, carrying on that gold medal streak which you maintain so effectively, Andy?
Well, every reason for my success came down to good leadership, and that was Jurgen. Some years we were less good personally, individually. Other years we were amazing. But the team performance always came down to that leadership side. So, the quality of the athletes, they're obviously got the beans, they've got all the power. It's the quality of the leadership which is going to be able to bring them together, get their heads in the right place, put them in one boat, and sort of light the fuse for them to get the best out of themselves. There's some great coaches in the system. There have been for a long time. And I think, yeah, I mean, the credit to Jurgen, he's been the consistent factor in all of it. So yeah, it comes down to the leadership. But you know, something I've learned is the leadership outside of the boat. The leadership within the boat can be as important as the leadership outside of the boat. How those two work together is pretty critical, but actually how you can galvanize behind one crew, one person, really makes a big difference.